Gaming Bolt presents 15 things you need to know before you buy Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Assassin's Creed Odyssey might not be taking the one-year gap that its direct predecessor did, but it's looking like a stellar game nonetheless. It's building on exactly what made Origins so good, bringing back some of the most beloved features this franchise has been known for, and adding radical new changes and departures that will, potentially, forever change the face of the series. Its release is looming large on the horizon, and as we gear up to engage in the age-long battle of good versus evil once again, let's first take a look at 15 of the most interesting bits of information you need to know about Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Combat. Combat was the area where Origins changed things the most, and Odyssey is, at its core, building on that same reinvention. However, it's changing things up a bit as well, by essentially making all of combat a lot more customizable than it was in Origins, or has ever been in the entire series. Ranged combat, stealth, and brawler-style melee combat will all three have their own individual skill charts, and Ubisoft have promised that they're each going to be deep enough to allow players to cater the combat experience to their own tastes and preferences. How much truth there is to that remains to be seen, but it's already looking a lot more fluid and open than Origins. Mythical creatures. Assassin's Creed might be a series that tries to, at least to some extent, maintain a semblance of historical accuracy, but that doesn't mean that it sticks to the history books to the letter. Ubisoft have been known to try interesting things with the franchise, and it looks like that'll continue in Odyssey. Mythological creatures such as the Minotaur and Medusa are going to be featured in Odyssey, and players will be able to take part in quests that task them with hunting these creatures down. Full-blown RPG. The thing that Ubisoft have put the most amount of emphasis on since the official reveal is the fact that they're turning the series into a full-blown action RPG. It's a direction that Assassin's Creed has been inching towards bit by bit for a long time, but Odyssey seems to be taking the full leap of faith. That doesn't just apply to customizable combat either. Dialogue choices, proper gear and equipment management, and everything else you'd expect to see in an RPG is all going to be in here. More than 30 hours of cutscenes. Did we mention dialogue choices? Yeah, we did. Ubisoft have claimed that the dialogue choices in Assassin's Creed Odyssey aren't going to be there just for the heck of it. No, they're actually going to have an impact on the way the story progresses. A byproduct of this is that Assassin's Creed Odyssey is a lot heavier on cutscenes than the series has ever been, which makes sense because if choices are as meaningful as Ubisoft says that they are, there will be plenty of cutscenes that players will be missing entirely. Odyssey, according to the developers, has over 30 hours of recorded interactive cutscenes. Whew. Multiple endings. Sticking with the point about the choice and consequence mechanics, here's just how meaningful it's apparently going to be. Assassin's Creed Odyssey will have multiple endings as well. Ubisoft have claimed that the game will put players in situations where they will be faced with tough decisions, and that these will have consequences that will have long-term effects on the story. They might even result in different endings. That's how long-term these will be. Of course, the game will still have to remain historically accurate to the era and the events it depicts, which means that the outcome of the Peloponnesian War isn't something that you'll get to decide. Apparently, it'll be the characters and the protagonist whose endings will be impacted by the choices that you make in the game. The War. Speaking of the Peloponnesian War, while it's unlikely that you'll be able to literally change the course of history, changing the course of the way, if not its outcome, is something that Odyssey will still allow you to do. It will be a full-fledged mechanic and a core part of the experience's gameplay loop. Each region of the map will see both Sparta and Athens fighting against each other to assert control, and players will be able to side with either one of them. Being the mercenary that they will be in Odyssey, doing missions for whichever side you choose and hence rendering them more powerful in that particular area. These will also involve all-out battle sequences between both sides, which will see over 100 soldiers from both sides fighting against each other in real time, something the players will be a part of as well. This looks and sounds suitably epic. Dynamic weather. Dynamic weather is something we more or less expect large emergent open world games to have in today's day and age, and a large emergent open world game is exactly what Assassin's Creed Odyssey is, so yeah, it has dynamic weather. What kinds of weather patterns we can expect isn't something we know much of yet, but we can definitely expect plenty of furious storms out in the seas. Speaking of, naval combat. Naval combat was a surprise addition to the series in Assassin's Creed 3, which was then taken to its absolute peak with Black Flag and to a lesser extent Rogue. Origins brought it back in a very limited fashion, but with Odyssey, naval exploration and combat is coming back in all of its glory. Of course, given the game's setting, you'll now be firing volleys of arrows instead of cannons, but it looks great. You'll now be able to also ram into ships head-on and literally split them in two, which looks as amazing as it sounds. Let's hope it feels just as good. And of course, it's getting expanded in other ways as well. Recruiting. Your ship is a lot more than just a means of travel and to engage in naval battles in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It is, more or less, your home base, kind of like Mother Base in the Phantom Pain. Something else like Mother Base in the Phantom Pain, you can recruit people to your ship. Almost every enemy NPC you run into in the game, you can analyze for their stats and advantages and disadvantages and recruit them to your naval crew. They will provide unique bonuses and buffs, and some might even provide missions. Map size. Ancient Egypt in Assassin's Creed Origins has to be, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the best open world maps I've ever seen in a video game. It was gorgeous, it was huge, it was decently diverse, and it had a ton of interesting things to do. Odyssey's Ancient Greece is looking to one-up it in almost every possible way. Ubisoft says that this is the biggest map it's ever created for Assassin's Creed, and at 130 kilometers squared, it's 62% bigger than the one in Origins. Of course, the catch is that a large section of that 130 kilometers squared is covered in water. So when it comes to the landmass, Origins still ranks ahead, but given how vital naval exploration and combat is going to be in Odyssey, that's still a whole lot of interesting ground, or water as this case may be, to cover. Biomes. Sure, the map's large, but even the largest maps can suffer from monotony. Hell, there are some people who will even tell you that Origins world suffered because of a lack of variety and because of the sameness of its environments. It doesn't look like that's going to be the case here. Other than the vast open seas and huge populated cities like Athens, which you pretty much already know about, there's going to be plenty of different stuff to see in ancient Greece. There's going to be an entire undersea to explore, lava volcanoes, snow-capped mountains, beaches, open green areas, and lots more. The visuals. Assassin's Creed games have always been one step ahead of most contemporary titles when it comes to the visuals department, not counting the bugs that they seem to suffer from that almost seem to go hand in hand with huge open worlds, and Odyssey is going to continue that trend. The game looks absolutely beautiful, and its visual variety is really making its art pop that much more. In fact, when the game's director Scott Phillips spoke to us some time back, he called Odyssey the prettiest game in the series. I'm inclined to agree, but let's reserve final thoughts on those until October 5th. Quest variety. Quest variety is something that has been a point of criticism in the Assassin's Creed games for as long as Assassin's Creed games have existed, really. Right from the ancient days of 2007 up until now, the games so often tend to resort to trailing missions or eavesdropping on someone or some variation of a mission that has been almost done to death by this point. In our interview with Scott Phillips, this was something we brought up, and Phillips told us that thanks to the game's choice and consequences mechanic, that's something that's going to be improved automatically. I think we have made huge improvements on that by focusing on choice, by giving players choice, by giving players options and how they complete quests, how they interact with quest givers, how they roleplay with the characters, he said. Because for the first time ever, you'll be choosing who you play as. It is a very different experience, and it's much more interactive and dynamic in both the world and the characters in the story, so gameplay will reflect that as well. Notoriety. Here's something else that Phillips told us. You're no longer driven by the Assassin's Creed, which makes sense because Odyssey is set centuries before the Assassin's Brotherhood was ever created. In Odyssey, we are a mercenary, which means we can kill, lie, steal, and be a scoundrel in general to our heart's content. In earlier games in the series, even up until Origins actually, every time you tried to kill a civilian NPC, it wouldn't take long for the game to get desynced, which is essentially just a fancy fail state. In Odyssey, that's no longer the case, which means the game now runs on a notoriety system similar to GTA's Wanted levels. For this, the game will pull in the Phylax mechanic from Origins. Bounty hunters and other mercenaries will hunt you down as your notoriety increases, while you can also make it go down through various means, such as finding the person that put the bounty on you and killing them. Present-day storyline. I know. Ugh. Ever since Assassin's Creed 3, many might even say before that, the present-day Abstergo storyline of the series has been an absolute mess. It's going nowhere, it's boring, it's uneven. Origins made some slight improvements in that area. Layla Hassan's story in present day was a tiny focus in the grand scheme of things, but it was an improvement over most of the stuff that came before it. Layla's story is going to continue in Odyssey, and let's just hope it actually goes somewhere. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from Gaming Bolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.